There is a kind of power that does not announce itself. It does not need to raise its voice or prove its presence through noise or confrontation. It simply is. This is the power of silence, the strength that grows not from reaction, but from restraint. It is the mark of a soul that has walked through storms, been misunderstood, attacked, and yet chooses peace over chaos. Silence is not the absence of voice, it is the presence of mastery. When a person chooses silence, it is rarely because they have nothing to say. Often, it is because they have already said everything that needed to be said. Through their actions, their endurance, their growth, the loudest truths do not always come through words. They are revealed through energy, behavior, and presence. There is a sacred kind of self-control in not responding to everything that tries to provoke you. The one who stays silent in the face of noise does not lack power. They have simply learned to use it differently. True silence is not emptiness. It is full of awareness. It is the state where the mind observes rather than reacts, where emotions are acknowledged but not allowed to dictate action. In silence, a person sees more clearly. They begin to notice the intentions behind words, the hidden motives behind behavior, the patterns that others miss in the rush to speak. In a noisy world, silence becomes an instrument of perception, a way to listen to what is not being said, to feel what is not being shown. People often mistake silence for surrender. They think that if you are quiet, you have been defeated. But silence is not submission, it is strategy. It is the refusal to waste energy on what no longer deserves it. It is knowing when to speak and when to preserve your energy for what truly matters. Sometimes silence says more than 1,000 defenses ever could. It says, I no longer need to convince anyone of who I am. It says, I choose peace over ego. It says, I have nothing to prove. There comes a stage in every person's life when they realize that not every battle deserves their voice. Some conflicts feed on reaction. They grow only when you engage. The moment you withdraw your attention, they wither. Silence then becomes an act of wisdom, a boundary that protects your energy from being drained by what does not align with your truth. You begin to understand that peace is not found in explaining yourself to others. It is found in understanding yourself so deeply that you no longer need to. When you reach that level of calm, people notice. They may not understand it, but they feel it. Your silence unsettles them, not because it is empty, but because it reflects something they have not yet mastered within themselves. It reflects discipline, it reflects emotional maturity, it reflects control over the self, the rare ability to remain still in a world addicted to reaction. Those who rely on chaos to feel significant cannot stand the quiet strength of someone who does not need to respond. Silence is not passive, it is active alignment. It is the act of stepping out of noise so you can hear your intuition again. In silence, your inner voice grows louder. You begin to see that most of the answers you were searching for were never out there. They were waiting within you, buried beneath the clutter of unnecessary opinions, arguments, and fears. In silence, you begin to rebuild yourself from the inside out. You learn that peace is not something you find in others, it's something you create within. Those who confuse silence with weakness have never understood what it takes to hold one's tongue when provoked, to remain centered when misunderstood, to stay calm when the world expects you to break. It takes greater strength to stay composed than to retaliate. To walk away is not cowardice, It is a declaration that your energy is too sacred to waste on what drains it. The strong do not always fight with words. Sometimes they fight through stillness. They win by refusing to play the game at all. Silence is also a teacher. It reveals the truth about others. When you stop responding, you see who was interested in connection and who was merely interested in control. You see who values your peace and who only values your participation in their drama. Silence exposes dynamics that conversation often hides. It teaches you who truly respects your boundaries and who only respects your reactions. The quiet person is often misread as detached or cold. But beneath that calm exterior lies a heart that has simply learned the cost of overexposure. They have realized that not everyone deserves access to their emotions, their thoughts, or their truth. They have discovered that silence is a sanctuary, a space where they can exist without the distortion of others' projections. When you choose silence, you reclaim the power to define yourself not through others' interpretations, but through your own stillness. In that stillness, something remarkable happens. Your presence begins to speak for you. The energy you carry becomes louder than any defense you could offer. People sense it without words, the confidence, the clarity, the depth. Silence transforms you from being a participant in noise to a mirror of truth. It reflects not what the world projects onto you, but what you have discovered within yourself. And so, silence becomes a declaration, not of defeat, but of victory. The victory of understanding over reaction, of depth over noise, of peace over chaos. It is not for the faint of heart. It is for those who have faced storms and realized they no longer need to shout to prove they survived. It is for those who understand that real power does not demand recognition. It simply exists, steady and unshaken. Like the quiet flame that never flickers, no matter how strong the wind blows, there comes a moment in every person's life when the noise of the world becomes too loud to bear. When every opinion, every expectation, every demand begins to suffocate the quiet truth within. It's in that moment that withdrawal calls you, not as an escape, but as a return to your own essence, your forgotten stillness, your unfiltered self. Withdrawal is not isolation. It is the soul's natural instinct to retreat from what distorts it, so it can remember what it truly is. When you begin to pull away from the chaos around you, people misunderstand. They call it detachment. They label it avoidance. They interpret your silence as loneliness. But what they do not see is that your withdrawal is a sacred act of realignment. You are not abandoning the world. You are recalibrating your relationship with it. You are no longer seeking validation from it, but clarity within yourself. You are learning to stand in your own vibration without being shaped by every current that passes through. Transformation always begins in solitude. Growth demands distance from what numbs or distracts you. When the soul is surrounded by noise for too long, it forgets its own rhythm. Withdrawal becomes the bridge back to that original rhythm. It's not an act of closing yourself off from life, but a deep inward journey into the part of you that has been drowned out by constant noise. It's the process of shedding what no longer fits: identities, attachments, illusions, and creating space for authenticity to breathe again. Most people fear being alone because they've never learned how to be with themselves. They mistake solitude for emptiness because they've only known themselves through the eyes of others. But when you withdraw, you begin to rediscover your own reflection. Not the one shaped by social roles or relationships, but the one that existed before anyone told you who you should be. In that sacred space, you begin to listen differently. The world outside quiets, and your inner voice finally becomes audible. Withdrawal is not rejection of others, it is acceptance of self. It is saying, I need to understand who I am without the noise. It is recognizing that constant connection can sometimes become a cage, that endless talking can drown truth, that too much exposure can dilute essence. When you withdraw, you are not running away from people. You are running toward your wholeness. You are creating the silence necessary for transformation to unfold naturally without external interference. In withdrawal, you begin to see what has been hidden by distraction. The emotions you suppressed begin to surface. The wounds you ignored begin to speak. The fears you buried begin to dissolve under the light of awareness. Withdrawal strips away illusions about others, about yourself, about what truly matters. It's uncomfortable at first because it dismantles the false structures you built to survive. But with every layer that falls away, you become more real, more grounded, more awake. The world glorifies constant presence, constant communication, constant availability, constant movement. But transformation requires absence. Just as the caterpillar disappears into the cocoon before emerging as something unrecognizable, you too must enter that sacred stillness. To the outside world, the cocoon looks like isolation, but within a revolution is taking place. Every part of you is being restructured, redefined, reborn. Withdrawal is your cocoon, the quiet space where you cease to be who you were and begin to become who you are meant to be. It takes courage to withdraw, to step back when the world demands your attention, to listen inwardly when everyone else is shouting outwardly. It's not weakness, it's wisdom, because only in withdrawal can you see the difference between what is real and what is conditioning. You begin to discern what truly nourishes you and what only drains you. You begin to understand which connections are authentic and which are built on dependency. You begin to see that solitude is not a punishment. It's a purification. Transformation rarely announces itself. It happens quietly, in the spaces where no one is watching. It happens when you sit alone with your pain instead of distracting yourself from it. It happens when you let the silence hold you instead of rushing to fill it. It happens when you no longer fear your own company. Withdrawal is the sacred pause where the old self dissolves and the new self takes root. You may not notice it at first, but every moment spent in solitude strengthens your awareness, refines your energy, and deepens your connection with your own soul. When you withdraw, life rearranges itself. People who once drained you start fading away. Environments that no longer resonate begin to feel foreign. Even your desires begin to shift. You stop craving attention and start seeking peace. You stop chasing outcomes and start trusting the process. You stop reacting to life and start responding with awareness. The outer world loses its grip, and you begin to live from a place of internal stability. Withdrawal is not a closing of the heart. It is its cleansing. In solitude, the heart softens. It learns to love without attachment, to care without control, to give without depletion. You begin to feel connected to everything, not through dependency, but through understanding. The more you withdraw from noise, the more you realize that silence is not empty. It is full of guidance. Every insight, every realization, every spark of wisdom is born from the soil of stillness. Those who have never withdrawn will never understand this kind of transformation. They see only the surface, the quiet, the distance, the retreat. But beneath that stillness, entire worlds are shifting. It is in the withdrawal that purpose becomes clear, that wounds turn to wisdom, that pain turns into perspective. The person who emerges after withdrawal is never the same as the one who entered it. Something deeper, more authentic, more luminous takes their place. To withdraw is to trust the unseen process of becoming. It is to believe that growth does not always happen in visibility. Sometimes the greatest transformations occur in silence, in the unseen corners of the self where only you can go. The world may call it isolation, but your soul knows better. It knows that withdrawal is how the spirit breathes, heals, and rises anew in a world that thrives on distraction. Attention has become the rarest form of power. Everywhere you turn, something is competing for your focus. A notification, a voice, a screen, a demand. Yet what most people don't realize is that attention is energy. Wherever your attention goes, your energy follows. It is the silent force that shapes your inner state and, in time, your outer reality. What you choose to focus on, you feed. What you withdraw your focus from, you starve. Attention is not just awareness, it is creation in motion. Most people spend their attention the way they spend loose change. Unconsciously, carelessly, impulsively. They give it away to drama, to validation, to fear, to comparison, and then wonder why they feel so drained, anxious, or unfulfilled. They forget that attention is a sacred currency, one that determines the quality of their experiences, relationships, and even their destiny. When you begin to guard your attention, you start mastering your life. Because the moment you reclaim your focus, you reclaim your power. There is a reason why every distraction today is designed to hold your gaze for as long as possible. The more your attention is scattered, the less energy you have for creation. The more you react, the less you build. Every scroll, every argument, every unnecessary thought fragments your focus, and with it fragments your strength. The world profits from your divided mind, but your soul only thrives in wholeness. When you start to value your attention as much as your time, you stop giving it to what depletes you. Attention is a mirror. Whatever you direct it toward, you magnify. Focus on fear and it multiplies. Focus on peace and it deepens. Focus on lack and you'll see more of it. Focus on gratitude and your life begins to expand effortlessly. The outer world does not shape your inner experience. Your inner focus does. This is why two people can live through the same event and perceive completely different realities. One sees chaos, the other sees opportunity. The difference is not circumstance, it is attention. Your attention is your vote. Every moment, you are voting for the reality you wish to experience. Most people unconsciously vote for their limitations. They keep thinking about what went wrong, who hurt them, or what they don't have, and then wonder why life keeps giving them the same story. But when you start to consciously redirect your attention toward what uplifts you, you shift from survival to creation. Energy flows where attention goes. The moment you choose where to place it, you begin to author your own reality. Attention is also the foundation of all relationships. Wherever you give your focus, you give your presence. That is why true listening feels like love, because it is the rare act of undivided attention. Yet when your attention is fragmented between the past and the future, you become absent from the present moment. You may be physically there, but energetically disconnected. The greatest gift you can give anyone, including yourself, is your full attention, because attention communicates value. Whatever you give it to, you say, this matters. When you begin to withdraw your attention from negativity, something profound happens. The things that once disturbed you start losing their power. The people who once controlled you begin to fade into irrelevance. The emotions that once overwhelmed you start to settle. Why? Because attention is nourishment. When you stop feeding a thought, it begins to die. When you stop replaying a memory, it loses its hold. When you stop engaging with a fear, it stops growing. Your silence becomes starvation to what no longer deserves to live within you. Attention is not only what you focus on externally, but also what you focus on internally. Every self-critical thought, every worry, every imagined scenario is a form of investment. You are either investing in peace or anxiety, confidence or doubt, clarity or confusion. When you begin to discipline your mind, to gently guide your attention back to what strengthens you, you start to notice how much of your suffering was created not by life itself, but by the direction of your focus. Those who master their attention master their emotions, because emotions follow focus. Anger, fear, sadness, they all require your mental participation to survive. The moment you stop feeding them with attention, they begin to dissolve. This is what a mindfulness is not about escaping the mind, it's about reclaiming it. It's the practice of noticing where your attention is and consciously bringing it back to the present. The present moment is the only place where your power truly exists, because it is the only place where attention and awareness meet. Attention is your inner compass. It always points toward what matters most to you, even when you're unaware of it. What you pay attention to reveals your priorities. If your attention is constantly on others' opinions, your life will revolve around approval. If it's always on what's missing, your life will feel incomplete. But if your attention turns inward, toward growth, healing, purpose, you begin to cultivate a deeper sense of fulfillment that cannot be shaken by external noise. You start realizing that attention is not meant to be scattered everywhere. It's meant to be directed like light. When focused, it becomes powerful enough to cut through illusion, to heal what's broken, to illuminate what's true. Just as sunlight magnified through a lens can burn through darkness, focused attention can burn through confusion. That is the hidden alchemy of awareness. The ability to transform chaos into clarity simply by seeing it fully without distraction. The challenge is that the world trains you to divide your attention. You're encouraged to multitask, to respond instantly, to always stay connected. But divided attention weakens perception. It makes it harder to feel deeply, think clearly, or act intentionally. The mind loses depth when it loses focus. The more scattered your attention becomes, the less connected you feel to yourself. And that disconnection is the root of modern suffering, not the lack of time, but the lack of presence. To reclaim your attention is to reclaim your freedom. It means deciding what deserves your mental energy and what doesn't. It means pausing before reacting, choosing awareness over impulse, stillness over noise. When you start guarding your attention like the precious resource it is, life begins to simplify. The unimportant fades. The essential becomes clear. You begin to see that most of your struggles were never external. They were misdirected investments of focus. Attention is the invisible architect of reality. It builds what you dwell on and demolishes what you neglect. It is your most valuable currency because it shapes your consciousness, and consciousness shapes your life. Every time you choose where to place it, you are quietly creating your future in ways words cannot describe. There is a truth that can only be seen in silence, a kind of wisdom that does not live in words, noise, or movement, but in the quiet spaces between them. Stillness is not the absence of motion, it is the presence of awareness. It is the sacred pause that allows what is hidden beneath the surface to rise. When chaos reigns, everything becomes distorted. Thoughts, emotions, and perceptions spin too quickly to see clearly. But when you become still, when you stop chasing, arguing, explaining, or running, life begins to reveal itself in ways that only stillness can make visible. Most people fear stillness because it feels like nothingness. They are addicted to motion, to distraction, to constant doing. They equate activity with progress, noise with meaning, speed with purpose. But chaos is not clarity. It's confusion disguised as momentum. The more restless the mind becomes, the harder it is to see what's true. That is why life has a way of slowing us down when we refuse to slow down ourselves. It forces us into stillness through loss, fatigue, heartbreak, or solitude, not to punish us, but to purify our vision. Stillness is not passive. It's deeply active on an invisible level. It reorganizes the mind, settles the body, and clears the emotional fog that chaos creates. It's in that calm that the truth of your experiences begins to surface. Truths you could not see when you were too busy surviving. In chaos, we react. In stillness, we understand. Stillness reveals the pattern behind pain, the lesson within confusion, the meaning beneath suffering. It is the moment when you stop trying to control life long enough to finally listen to what it's trying to tell you. When everything around you is uncertain, your instinct is to move, to fix, to fight, to find immediate answers. But stillness asks for a different kind of courage, the courage to stay, to breathe, to observe. It demands that you surrender the illusion of control and trust that clarity will come not from doing more, but from doing less. In stillness, your awareness deepens. You begin to notice what truly matters and what was only noise. You begin to sense the subtle truth that chaos tries to bury, that every storm, no matter how violent, passes, and what remains afterward is the quiet strength of your inner foundation. Stillness is not something you create, it's something you uncover. It's always been there, beneath the constant noise of thought. Like a lake disturbed by wind, the surface of the mind ripples with every external event, but beneath it lies still, untouched water. When the wind dies, the lake reflects the sky perfectly. Likewise, when the noise of thought settles, you begin to reflect reality as it is, not as fear distorts it. Stillness becomes your mirror, showing you where you've been chasing illusions, where you've mistaken reaction for truth, and where you've lost touch with yourself. Chaos hides what is real because it keeps you spinning. It distracts you from the root of things. It convinces you that the problem is always outside you, in others, in timing, in circumstance. But when you become still, you see that most battles were internal all along. You begin to witness how your own fears, insecurities, and unhealed wounds shape your perception of the world. You begin to understand that the external noise you tried to silence was often just a reflection of your internal unrest. Stillness brings that realization gently not to shame you, but to free you. In stillness, the mind slows down enough for the heart to speak. The voice of intuition, drowned out by chaos, begins to whisper again. It doesn't speak in logic or analysis, but in quiet knowing. It tells you what feels right, what is ready to end, what is asking to be born. This inner voice does not compete with the world, it guides you beyond it. When you are still, you reconnect with that voice, the one that always knew what you needed long before the world told you otherwise. The world will always pull you toward chaos because chaos sells. It feeds on urgency, conflict, comparison, and fear. But the deeper truth, the kind that transforms you, is found only in stillness. Because stillness is where awareness becomes pure. It is where you can finally see that nothing outside of you has real power over your inner state unless you give it permission. It is where you realize that peace is not something you wait for after the storm. It is something you carry through it. Stillness reveals that much of what you once called failure was redirection. Much of what you called rejection was protection. Much of what you called loss was the clearing needed for something greater to arrive. But these insights only appear when the noise subsides. As long as you are entangled in reaction, arguing with what happened, chasing what's next, you remain blind to the deeper order unfolding beneath chaos. Stillness does not change the events of your life, but it changes your relationship with them. It gives you the eyes to see purpose where before there was only pain. It is in moments of stillness that healing takes root. The body repairs itself when it rests, and the soul is no different. When you stop forcing movement, the energy that was once consumed by resistance begins to flow toward restoration. You begin to process what you've been avoiding. You start to integrate the lessons your pain was trying to teach. Transformation doesn't always happen through action. Sometimes it happens through allowing yourself to stop, to breathe, to be. Stillness also brings you face to face with the truth of impermanence. You see how everything changes, how nothing lasts forever, and how clinging only deepens suffering. In that awareness, you begin to release control. You stop demanding that life obey your expectations and begin to trust its rhythm. You start to see that even chaos has its place, that its purpose is to break what no longer serves you, so that stillness can reveal what will. When you cultivate stillness, you stop reacting to life as if it were happening to you and begin to experience it as something unfolding through you. You realize that your peace was never dependent on circumstances. It was hidden beneath your reaction to them. Stillness doesn't make you passive, it makes you precise. It allows you to act from clarity instead of confusion, from wisdom instead of fear. And in that clarity, you find that the truth's chaos, once concealed, have been waiting patiently in the quiet all along. There comes a time when you realize that your energy has been scattered across too many directions. Pleasing others, proving your worth, chasing validation, fixing what was never yours to fix. In that realization, something within you shifts. You begin to understand that you cannot live a centered life while constantly orbiting around others. You start to turn inward, not out of selfishness, but out of necessity. This turning inward, this act of self-focus, is not withdrawal from life. It is a return to the source of your power. It is the beginning of true alignment. Most people misunderstand self-focus. They think it means shutting others out or caring only for oneself. But self Focus is not ego, it is awareness. It is the understanding that everything you experience externally is a reflection of what exists internally. Your relationships, your work, your emotions, they all mirror your inner state. When you neglect yourself, your life reflects imbalance. When you nurture yourself, everything begins to harmonize. Focusing on yourself is not about ignoring the world, but about aligning your inner world so that your outer one can function with clarity and purpose. Alignment begins when your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction. When you say what you mean what you feel, and act in integrity with both. But this alignment cannot happen while your attention is fragmented. If your energy is constantly given away to external approval, you lose connection with your inner truth. Self-focus brings you back. It reminds you that before you can create peace in your environment, you must create it within. Before you can heal others, you must learn to hold space for your own healing. There is a deep liberation that comes from realizing that you are responsible for your own frequency. When you stop waiting for others to give you happiness, validation, or closure, you reclaim the energy that was once scattered. You begin to see that you are not powerless. You were just misdirected. Every time you bring your attention back to yourself, you take back what was unconsciously given away. This is not isolation, this is reclamation. You are collecting the fragments of yourself that were left behind in old attachments, old stories, and old wounds. The world often praises selflessness while quietly punishing self-awareness. You are told to give endlessly, to serve, to sacrifice, to please, but no one reminds you that you cannot pour from an empty vessel. Without self-focus, giving becomes depletion. With it, giving becomes expansion. Because when you are aligned with yourself, your energy flows naturally, freely, without resentment or exhaustion. You begin to give from fullness, not from lack, and that shift changes everything: how you love, how you work, how you show up. Self-focus also means learning to observe yourself with honesty. It is not just about affirmations and comfort, it's about clarity. It's the courage to ask, why do I feel this way? What belief is shaping this reaction? What am I trying to control? This level of awareness can be uncomfortable because it strips away illusions. But alignment requires truth. You cannot build harmony on self-deception. The more you focus inward, the more you start to recognize patterns that once ruled your behavior without your consent. You begin to see where you've been acting from fear instead of intuition, from conditioning instead of authenticity. When you focus on yourself, you stop fighting for external validation. You stop chasing recognition from those who cannot see you. You stop explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding it. Instead, you begin to cultivate a quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself because it knows itself. Self-focus teaches you that inner peace is not a reward for perfection, it is the natural result of alignment. When you know who you are and what you value, decisions become effortless. You no longer need to overthink or over-explain. You move with clarity because you are rooted in yourself. The more you focus inward, the more the outer world begins to reorganize itself. What was once chaotic starts to make sense. What was once heavy begins to lift. This is not magic, it is resonance. When your inner state changes, your energy changes, and life responds accordingly. Opportunities align with your growth, relationships reflect your boundaries, and challenges become teachers rather than punishments. The external world mirrors your internal coherence. Self-focus is also the foundation of emotional maturity. It teaches you to take responsibility for your reactions instead of projecting them outward. Instead of blaming others for your pain, you begin to ask what part of you is being mirrored by that pain. This shift transforms victimhood into awareness. You start to see every experience, even the painful ones, as feedback, as guidance pointing you back toward alignment. Self-focus turns suffering into self-knowledge. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what is this showing me about myself? Focusing on yourself doesn't mean cutting the world off. It means meeting the world from a place of balance. It means showing up to life without losing yourself in it. It means holding space for others without absorbing their chaos. It means loving without attachment, giving without depletion, listening without losing your voice. Self-focus you into the center of your own energy, where you can navigate life with grounded awareness instead of emotional turbulence. There is a profound calm that arises when you live in alignment. You no longer rush to fix what isn't broken. You no longer chase what doesn't align. You no longer confuse movement with progress. Instead, you begin to trust timing, because you are no longer out of sync with yourself. You begin to sense when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to stay silent. This rhythm is the natural intelligence of alignment, and it only becomes clear when your focus returns inward. In self-focus, you rediscover your own authority. You realize that the approval you've been seeking was never as powerful as your own permission. You stop trying to fit into spaces that shrink you. You stop bending your truth to be accepted. You stop measuring your worth by external standards. Self-focus reminds you that you are not meant to fit into every place. You are meant to align with what reflects your essence. And when you do, life begins to unfold with a sense of effortless direction. Alignment is not about controlling life. It is about cooperating with it. When your focus is scattered, life feels random, disconnected, confusing. But when your attention returns to yourself, you start to see patterns, connections, synchronicities. You begin to feel guided, supported, understood by something deeper than logic. That is the silent power of alignment. It doesn't make you superior, it makes you whole. It connects you to your purpose, your peace, your path, and all that was meant for you begins to flow naturally, as if it had been waiting for you to simply turn inward and remember who you are